We're live. Thanks for joining us again on our Substack. So we have a lot of breaking news that we want to get to today. We don't have a ton of time, but we want to get to several things. Of course, the Pope, Pope Leo the 14th. He's just been chosen, whatever the word is for it. But I also want to get into the trade deals as well, right? And the trade deals, Trump has touted these for weeks now. He finally has one, or does he? I don't know. But Ed, let's jump into the Pope because the Pope seems to be pretty progressive on social issues as well as immigration.
Yeah, I mean, this was a huge surprise, right? Nobody expected an American pope to be selected. People thought it would be an Italian pope, so at least somebody from Europe, right? But it was the first American pope was just selected, Robert Prevost of America, and of course he's going by Pope Leo the 14th, like Brian said, and he's viewed as a centrist in the church. So he's kind of in the middle. He's not too far to the left, not too far to the right. But he has a lot of progressive views. He has progressive views when it comes to uh, minorities, when it comes to marginalized individuals, and when it comes to immigration. So this is kind of going to set up like quite the interesting scenario with him and Trump. You know, given that he's from America, I think he's probably going to have a lot of input in what America does and how America handles some of these immigration scenarios.
Yeah, no, I think that you can't discount that, right? The Pope is probably one of the leading figures in the world, right? Like people all over the world look to him. But in times past, they haven't been American, so like Americans would brush it off. But he's not an American. It's Italy, or he's Italian, he's Argentinian. It doesn't really matter to us. His views don't represent our views. But if he's an American and he's saying things like, "Oh, Trump's immigration policies are inhumane," that's huge. And I'm not saying he said exactly that, but he has. If you go back and look at his Twitter handle, just for the last few months, actually he actually attacks, or I don't want to say attacks, but he speaks out against many of the views of MAGA when it comes to immigration, as well as JD Vance and Donald Trump. There's a laundry list, maybe not laundry list, but there are several different instances where he either retweeted something that was against what Trump was saying with immigration, or he actually replied to stories and countered what the narrative was. One was from JD Vance, saying that he was wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. I didn't read the full article that he is retweeting there, but another one, he said he quoted Cardinal Dolan, which Cardinal Dolan said why Donald Trump's anti-immigration rhetoric is so problematic, and then Dolan wrote a piece for the Washington Post. Um, Additionally, he retweeted a post by a man named Rocco Palmo, and that tweet that he retweeted, and usually a retweet represents a view that you agree with, unless you add a comment and say something else. The post said, as Trump and Bukele use the Oval Office to feds illicit deportation of U.S. residents, once an undocumented Salvadorian himself, now D.C. asks, do you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet? And that was referring to what was going on with Trump and Bukele. This was posted just less than a month ago on April 14th about the deportations to this El Salvadoran prison.
Yeah, so I mean, he has said in the past that he aligns very much with Pope Francis, of course, the deceased pope. He has been very adamant about environmental issues. He's taken some strong stands to replant mangroves in Peru. He's done a lot in Peru for the environment. He has been very, like you said, very, I don't want to say pro immigration, but pro love of immigrants. He believes that immigrants need to be treated like how, if you read the Bible, Jesus treated immigrants, or said that immigrants should be treated. And of course, Brian and I are both Jewish, so we don't follow those teachings exactly, but I mean, neither do most Christians, right? The ones who are so anti-immigration and who are saying, "Oh, let's deport these people to prisons." So, like I said, I think it's going to bring up some conflicts when it comes to immigration. I'm sure he's going to stand up and speak out when he feels that individuals are being unjustly treated, especially in America, given that he's from America.
Yeah, his views, at least on the social issues, sort of mirror Pope Francis. That I think that's the best way to describe it. Of course, he doesn't have exactly the same views as Pope Francis on everything, but it's he's very much aligned with him on many of the social issues and on immigration. I already see MAGA kind of flipping out. Especially on X, I made a post about this, and they're just telling me we don't care. It's not our country. He doesn't represent our country. Yeah, but I mean, he's from America and he's the Pope and
Well, I mean,
he's a big.
he represents Catholicism, right? And he's from America, so he's gonna represent just like Pope Francis did, he represents Catholics all around the whole world. I mean, he's the head of the Catholic religion now, and like you said, I've seen MAGA on X saying, "Oh, he's not even a Catholic. The Catholic Church isn't Catholic anymore." And it's just because this pope has different views from them. And this pope believes in, you know, what Jesus said about immigrants. So he's not Catholic because he doesn't say, "Oh, let's send them to prisons." Uh, so so it's going to be very interesting to follow.
Yeah, so I think we move away from the Pope and onto another controversial issue, right? Trump's trade war and tariffs. It's been over a month. It's been about a month and 6 days since his whole liberation day that basically tanked the stock market, liberated us all from our 401ks, I guess. But today, an announcement of the first trade deal that didn't actually happen, but it's kind of an agreement to a trade deal that he pumped up and, made a big deal about and had this press conference that was an
It's
hour.
it's a it's a deal to work on a deal.
Yeah, it's a deal to complete a deal. But to be fair, we got some of the details of what they are working towards, what they want to actually be in this new deal that will be signed. Trump says in a few weeks. I'm guessing it's going to be longer than that. Um, but I'll just tell a few of them. So number one, and this is the worst part of it, is that the tariffs on the UK remain in place, a flat 10% tariff. Um, Usually there wasn't much of a tariff at all. I think 2.5% maybe. So this is automatically a 7.5% increase on imported goods from the UK compared to just a month ago, right? Now, that might not be a ton, but that increases inflation on these products substantially. Now, go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, 10%. You can't say with 100% certainty that this 10% tariff is going to increase the price of goods that are imported from the UK to the US by 10%. You look at the profit margins. The companies that are importing these goods, do they have room from between the price they charge and the price they pay to maybe absorb some of these tariffs? But regardless of that, right? If these small businesses, because most of the companies importing are small businesses, mom and pop shops, are they having to absorb some of these tariffs? If so, that's hurting them. That means that they can't afford to pay as many employees. Could lead to layoffs. It means that they're not doing as well. And when some of these small business owners don't do as well, it trickles down through the economy.
Yeah, and what Trump had this big sign in the Oval Office when he was making this announcement. He had the Prime Minister of the UK on the phone, which was really odd because I mean, like the press is there listening to the phone, right? And it just wasn't that clear, and it just seemed corny. But he had this sign and it said $6 billion in tariff revenue will still be brought in. So so they're saying, okay, so the government's going to make $6 billion in tariffs from the UK still, even though we created this deal. That's a $6 billion tax on companies who are going to pass that on to consumers, or a substantial amount of that onto consumers. Now,
Regardless, it's a tax. All that's a tax on Americans, whether it's American consumers or American retailers.
and it probably won't be 6 billion, because what happens is that you increase tariffs, you reduce imports, and like it will probably be something more like 3 or 4
And
billion.
I think that's a very important thing to point out. Trump keeps coming up with these numbers, how much more revenue the government's going to make on these tariffs based on the number of imports we currently have. And then multiplying that by, point 0.1 for 10%. But in reality, as tariffs increase, the US retailers are going to be importing less goods from overseas, or at least from the countries with the biggest tariffs. So it's going to lower imports, which in turn lowers the revenue that the government actually does make.
Another number that was on that sign was that it opens up $5 billion of American products to the UK. So basically what that $5 billion number was how much money in our products that were tariffed coming into the UK now have reduced tariffs. So that too was misleading. Um, and I mean, like this deal isn't done yet, but some industries like the beef industry, because tariffs are going to be removed for importing beef into the UK, right? But
Up to a certain amount, I
yeah,
believe.
so it was 0% up until, like, I think 13,000 kilograms or something like that. Now there won't be that limit. Now, after 13,000 kilograms, before it was 20%, a 20% tariff. So that tariff will be removed. So that does help. That does help our beef and cattle industry some.
Do we know approximately, do we maximize that export currently using that limit? Like, so are we exporting enough to reach that limit? So removing the limit, does that actually help? Do we know that for a
Yeah,
fact?
it should allow us to sell more. So like companies like Tyson, other meat producers that like they sell beef, they will be able to sell more, and it's estimated, according to AI, and you can't trust all these numbers, but it's estimated to be about $150 million a year. So it's a decent amount for the cattle industry here in America. But now here's the downside: we are drastically reducing tariffs on steel and aluminum coming from the UK, which means that our steel and aluminum industries are not going to be happy about that. So everything in these trade deals, there's push and pull. Something that's good is also bad. Something that's bad is also good, depending on how you look at it. So now consumers won't have to pay that tariff on steel and aluminum coming from the UK, but our businesses will now suffer a little bit, just like anything, right? Like Trump is putting tariffs on to protect American businesses, but at the same time, it's hurting consumers.
So,
It's
I mean, is this really going to bring manufacturing back? Like, me
no,
looking at
it's
this from
more
a business,
agriculture. It's
fr fr
more agriculture and beef.
yeah, but
More,
I mean, like, the Trump's whole thing was, "Oh, we're gonna bring manufacturing back to America. That's what these tariffs are gonna do." A 10% tariff likely isn't going to make a company say, "I'm better off manufacturing in the US." I don't see that happening, and it's going to increase prices. It might not be huge. It probably won't be by that 10%, but they will go up.
Well, yeah, and like I said, this is more about agriculture. So he's trying to benefit really his voter base, like the middle of the country, the farm country. Ethanol, he's having the UK reduce the trade barrier to ethanol. Uh, Agriculture, beef. It's all stuff that's going to benefit middle America. Obviously, he only cares about his own voters, it appears, unfortunately. Um, I think what this does is it's gonna show the rest of the world that yeah, like, you don't really have to give much up. Like, this isn't some win for the United States. It's sort of like, okay, well, he threatened these huge tariffs. He took some of the tariffs away. He got some things. He gave up some other things. It's not like this ultimate deal that's going to make the U.S. economy thrive again or like decrease inflation. It's going to increase inflation. It's
There
going to increase inflation right now.
there was an interesting moment during the press conference in the Oval Office today, and I thought it was kind of comical that Starmer was not in the Oval Office. He was calling in through Zoom, basically. Shows that it wasn't really a huge deal. But Trump was asked about the ports in America, and currently we're starting to see less imports coming in because of the tariffs. And he was asked about the dock workers and the truck drivers who are worried about their jobs because they're seeing this slowdown. And his answer was basically that's a good thing because it means America is losing less.
Well, yeah, I could actually play it. You want me to play it really fast for everybody? Here.
Yeah,
Business has slowed down, as you mentioned. But we're seeing as a result, ports here in the US, the traffic has really slowed, and now thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are worried about their jobs.
Yeah, no, we lose. That means we lose less money. I see that.
we lose less
So,
money. I mean, that just seems so out of touch with the reality, out of touch with his own base. Because most of these dock workers and truck drivers are probably Trump voters.
right. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are like middle America or at the ports, and they likely voted for Trump, right? Especially the truck drivers. Ports, who knows? I'm not sure about that. Um, but so I I think now the market needs to decide where do we go from here? Are there going to be a lot of deals? I don't think the deals are going to be snowballing in, and I don't think the deals are going to. Something that Trump said that really caught my ear was, yeah, the UK only has a 10% tariff now. Don't expect that on the other deals. It's going to be much higher on the other deals. So he's not going to get rid of the tariffs. He's not going to get rid of them. These
Yeah.
other deals, you're going to see even higher tariffs. That should scare the market. I am so surprised that the market is up right now. I cannot understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the long run, it's like if we stretch this out for another couple months, get into June and July, I think we're really going to start seeing these tariffs affecting the number of imports, affecting products on the shelves in Walmart, on Amazon, you know, at Home Depot, at Lowe's. I think we're going to start seeing shortages. I think we're going to start seeing price increases, and I don't think it's going to show up in the consumer price index and all the other stats that they put out there until probably June or July.
Yeah, but Americans are gonna start feeling it probably in the next week or 2. Even this week, some of the ports are reporting that there's, like, no ships. Seattle said that there's no ships in port today. Other ports, I think Los Angeles said that the ships were down, like, 35%. So these products on these ships are eventually gonna make it to the stores, but it's gonna take time. So even if we get rid of all tariffs, which are obviously aren't happening, it would still take approximately 30 days from that point for new shipments to come. So starting next week, this week, up until mid late June, we're already screwed.
What did we see during COVID? We saw what happens when the supply chain is cut off. And this is another way of cutting off that supply chain because businesses are uncertain. They don't want to import more products and pay the huge tariffs. They don't know if their business is going to be able to stay open because they don't know if these tariffs are going to be coming down. But the supply chain is already shut off. And what's going to happen? Let's say he does remove the tariffs at some point, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. When that happens, we're going to see a flood of imports coming in. There's going to be more backlog at the ports, just like we saw during COVID, and that's going to cause more inflation because when supply is cut off or supply is very limited and demand is there, which it has been, that's when prices go up.
Well, and this time, unlike back with COVID, the Fed is likely not going to have many tools in their toolbox. During COVID, they could drop rates almost down to zero because there wasn't this backdrop of inflation. Right now, there is this backdrop of inflation, and there's a huge concern over inflation. So when jobs start dropping, the Fed will usually, their mandate is to decrease rates to increase the job numbers. While they usually do that, they can't now because they have the concern with inflation. If you drop rates, then inflation rises. So it's just an economic catastrophe. I don't want to say catastrophe, but it's an economic concern that could turn into a catastrophe if these tariffs remain in place for, months.
Yeah, and I think regardless of what happens, the effects are still gonna take place. It depends on how extreme they are.
Yeah. So really quick, one last thing, and then we're going to call it a show. Um, Joe Biden. Joe Biden was on The View today, and the internet is sort of up in arms, people on both sides really, about him saying that he thinks he would have beat Trump if he ran. So, Ed, would Biden have defeated Trump if he ran?
I don't think I mean, according to the polls that we saw before the election, he was down by double digits in a lot of these swing states. When Kamala became the nominee, she jumped significantly over what his numbers were. Of course, we don't know how things would have played out. We don't know how the electorate would have ultimately voted, but I honestly don't think Biden would have beat Trump the second time around.
So, one thing that stood out in my mind was a stat I read shortly after the election, shortly after Harris lost to Trump, and it asked voters if they knew that that Biden was dropped out or not, and it was something like 9% of voters didn't even realize that Kamala Harris was the Democratic nominee.
Wait,
So
but
are
how's
those
that work when it comes to placing your ballot? Like,
No,
look at the
before the election.
oh,
So as they headed into the voter booth, they didn't know that Biden wasn't on the ballot.
and
So
if you're that out of touch with what's going on in current events, you probably didn't even know that Harris was the VP at the time either.
Well
So
well well, so does he have an argument that since there was only this 3-month window for Harris to, like, get her name out there and, get the media attention, that some Americans didn't even realize when they went into voting that Biden had dropped out and Harris was the nominee? Like, are Americans that disconnected from media that they don't know that stuff? Are we too overwhelmed with jobs and kids that we don't have even the slightest bit of knowledge about who's running for the election you're voting in? 9%.
yeah, I mean, it's very possible. I still don't think Biden would have won just because of the poll numbers that were showing he was so far behind.
Yeah, I tend to agree that he probably would have lost as well. It's just a shame that Trump doesn't even recognize the fact that he lost by 7 million votes the first time, and you have MAGA like all blaming Biden for making the statement. Well, you guys still don't admit that you lost 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's MAGA for you, right?
Yeah, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Before you turn off, please subscribe to us. Like I said before, like no need to.
And by us, Brian means him. Like we said in the last show, this account that I'm using is just so we can be on video together without me traveling to Brian's house and sitting next to him.
Yeah, subscribe, follow us. We want to do these a couple times a week. I also I saw Lev was watching, so Lev Parnas. I'm looking forward to going on his show a few times, maybe once a week or every other week or something like.
Brian, you're Lev's protege, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah,
You learned from Lev.
yeah. I learned from Lev, at least when it came to Substack, not working with Trump to like bilk money. Well, sorry, Lev. I know you
No,
took
he's
that as a
Lev's
joke.
a good guy.
Yeah. So yeah, so thanks for joining, and we'll see you probably tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then maybe on Monday.